welcome back to How We Make Movies. I'm your host, Amanda Lippert, and this is the show where we talk to real indie filmmakers about their stories, the story behind the story, and everything that goes into getting their films made. But before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to all of our partners for helping us get this show online and get this event happening, to you guys, our audience, for showing up every time that we do this, and also a special thank you to Canon for letting us hang out in their cool space right here in Hollywood. Isn't this gorgeous? Thank you so much. So we're really happy to be here today and just happy to, give you guys something that's going to help you, have the tools to be better filmmakers. And our guests tonight are just phenomenal people. We've got writer-director Claudia Sparrow and executive producer, post-supervisor Leandro Marini. She's an AFI grad who won multiple festival awards and was recognized in 2 magazines as one of the 10 prominent female filmmakers in Peru. And I Remember You is her feature debut. He is the founder, co-owner, and post-supervisor of Local Hero. He's overseen the post-production and delivery over 60 feature films, including Pitch Perfect, The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Hours, and the upcoming directorial debut of Helen Hunt called Ride. Please give a warm welcome to Claudia and Leandro. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you guys are in post-production and it's going to be a little while for the film comes out, but what is the show about? Why should people get excited about seeing it?
We are 3 weeks away from finishing I Remember You, my first feature film. And it's a love story. It's our baby. We've been working on it for almost 2 years now. So it's super exciting to be almost 3 weeks away from being fully done. And the story, again, is a love story, and it's about Lee and Samuel, 2 strangers who feel a very powerful connection after being involved in the same accident. And we can't wait to show it.
Yeah,
unleash it on the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can you talk to us about the color grading process and the post process and how you were, the importance of that and how you were able to achieve the look?
Sure. I come from a VFX background, and like I said, I've built a post house in Santa Monica. And the finishing process on a feature is something that, like we said earlier, every department thinks that they're the most important department on a film. Makeup people will tell you makeup makes a movie. Post people will tell you post makes a movie. But post really does make a movie.
We all know it's really the actors, though, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
People don't go to the, audiences don't go to the movies to watch actors. They go to watch the color. Finishing, DI, color correction, and visual effects is something that maybe independent filmmakers don't know that much about and are not sure how it sort of contributes to the film. And because I come from a color correction background, I know a lot about how you elevate production value with grading, with color grading. And so we also relied a lot on the DI and color grading and visual effects. If we didn't have time to light things exactly the way we wanted it, we would just move on because we knew we could polish it up later. We're in the process right now of using the color grading to do simple things, difficult things, and then ridiculously difficult things.
You said that you added over $300,000 worth of production value by, doing the DI and the color yourself. Can you show us some of the slides you brought and how you were able to do that?
Yeah. If you had to just go out and buy these services at retail value somewhere else on a movie that has 180 visual effects and 40 of those are really difficult visual effects, epic scale visual effects, you'd be looking in the range of $200,000 to $300,000 to just buy that off the street.
This is something filmmakers can learn how to do and do themselves.
Exactly. We're not unique in the sense that, the company that I created started with a laptop 10 years ago, and I taught myself everything. It's nothing you can't learn if you're willing to. It's not incredibly difficult. The tools are not that expensive. All the visual effects in this film are done in After Effects, which is a $1,000 desktop tool. And there are large-scale VFX in this film. And this is all stuff that we just taught ourselves over the years. Obviously, you need to really love it and put a lot of time into it. But if you're willing to learn, the more post-production that you know yourself, the more you can bring to your film and the more control you can have over your film. This film would not have been possible if we didn't know how to do the post-production ourselves. We'd have to go out and raise an amount of money that maybe we couldn't raise. This is one of the rooms in our post house, and we are partnered with a company called Assimilate, which makes the color correction and visual effects system Scratch. And this is our DI theater that is running Scratch. This is the interface for Scratch, and this is part of the DI tools that we use on every movie. So we're using the same tools on this movie that on our own personal project that we are on large-scale studio wide release movies. So this is an example of a before and after. This is what came out of the camera, and we really needed this to be at a certain time of day with a certain mood. It just wasn't that kind of weather when we were there in the day. So we got this, and let's go to the next slide. And this is after grading. And that was a quick process. That is very basic color correction. That's not, that elaborate. That's something you can do on your DaVinci Resolve on your own, or if you use Scratch, definitely. Bringing that level of production value change is a simple kind of thing. So this is supposed to be happening at midnight. And there's a whole sequence in this movie that takes place day for night. And there was no chance we were going to be able to section off an entire part of the beach and then light it, light enough of the beach to where you could see all the way out into the distant ocean and the pier and everything. So we decided to shoot it in hard sun in the middle of the day. And this was a very small shoot, just our main actors and a few crew people. We did a day for night look all through color correction. So this meant that we could shoot to our heart's content in the middle of the day in any direction, and then with some medium level color grading and DI effects, we're able to make this a convincing moonlight day for night. So that's about as far as we would go in color correction. Going beyond that really is visual effects. This is the end result of shooting in a pool with a little underwater housing and two people with little wooden paddles just trying to make waves. Oh, and a hose. This is the before. Somebody is just spraying that with a little hose, two people making waves, and you can actually see the pool edge there. And this is just in somebody's pool in just a suburban neighborhood. We just draped a little black masking behind her and shot in the middle of the day. And that's the end result of that shot. Full storm background, choppy ocean background, and added a lot of rain. And this is a drowning sequence during a flood. And so for a little $100,000 film, there's no way you can dream this big if you aren't willing to learn or execute visual effects on this level. But this is not that difficult to visual effects. This is just man hours. This is just somebody sitting there manually painting her out and then putting a background in. That background is a $70 piece of stock photography. We bought that from Shutterstock. We didn't go out and shoot that background. Totally convincing though.
How long did it take you to
do that shot?
Yeah.
Maybe a day, maybe 6 to 8 hours. That's probably the most efficient way that you could possibly do that shot. But if you think about what it took us to shoot that in a pool, plus 6 hours of somebody's time on a computer, it's a lot of production value for small resources. So the next one is the most extreme that we went on this film in terms of VFX. This is supposed to be a Dutch country farmhouse splitting in two in the middle of a flash flood storm. Looks great, right? We didn't even have the house when we shot it. We literally went on a Google image search and looked for great-looking family Dutch farmhouses and found this one. And that's the final shot. And that is made from nothing else than that one picture and some stock photography that we bought on Shutterstock.com for $70. That is the foreground water is a raging river that we literally sliced out of some stock photography of a river at high tide. So in Photoshop, we cut that house out. There's no 3D computer graphics in that next shot. That took me about 6 hours to do, and it is the most difficult shot to execute technically in the movie. Cut the house out, split it in two. I used a stock library of debris elements, so cheap debris. That's really just one picture that's just cut into a bunch of layers and has a little bit of shatter element on it and a big rain element on the front. And when you see this in the final film, I mean, it's pretty convincing. So this came about, this wasn't even planned. We looked at the cut and we were trying to get around having to do a shot like this. It was all like close-ups inside the house and things like that. And we looked at the cut and we realized, we just want for one shot to just see it, Let's stop trying to hide from, keep trying to cheat it. It just really wants to breathe and show what's happening. Let's jump outside the house and just see what's happening. And I had no idea how we were going to do it. I just knew that we needed it. So then I set about like, okay, how would we do that?
How did you figure out how to do it? How did you learn since you're self-taught?
I watched the behind the scenes of Jurassic Park. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I approach everything in visual effects from what is the path of least resistance. A misconception about visual effects, and I think one of the wrong ways to approach visual effects is to think about like, oh, let's just go right to particle simulations and let's go right to CG models and stuff like that. Another VFX artist would have maybe sat down and started modeling this house out of individual polygons and then texturing it with brick and then doing a particle simulation for the rain. From experience, I've learned, I used to work that way, and I just would hit incredible amounts of time that was needed for that kind of thing. And so I would learn to discover cheats, Okay, we're not moving towards the house, and we're not really panning left and right too much, so technically, no one's going to notice if this is a flat card, because the camera's not moving towards it. Okay, so the house can be a flat card. How do we do the water? So I started looking into stock footage libraries, seeing, well, maybe we can find something. And I found a lot of great river stock footage that looked like a flood. And I thought, okay, if I steal that and steal this, and they're all cheats. So I knew that this shot was a little scary. I was wondering how it was going to turn out. I knew we could employ a bunch of cheats to do it. And when it finally started coming together, Claudia's idea was to add all that wood breaking apart in the middle of it. We did a couple iterations of it, and at first, her first note was, "It looks cartoony." You never want to hear that. So, okay, it looks
Especially
cartoony.
from your wife.
Yeah.
That's right. Because you can't, you're going to see that person later that day. So the building of it was relatively simple, but then the fine tuning was where it got complicated. Yeah.
And obviously in context, because that changes everything. Again, it was the tricky part. It was to find a balance, too much, too little. Of how much water we have. How violent it should be, because we are putting these elements together. We didn't shoot it.
That brings up a good point. One of the most important things if you're attempting to do VFX is to do everything while looking at it in context. You can go down a rabbit hole on one shot and get it great, and then you drop it in the film and you realize, oh, in the next cut, the house is already too far broken. It needs to be twice as broken in the previous cut. So always be working in context.
And you have to take also, the actor's performance in consideration, all of that. So that was for me, it was obviously a learning process.
Can you describe your aesthetic, the aesthetic that you used in this film, and kind of what's become your style as a filmmaker?
I've been learning about myself, and learning to let my voice out with each film. And I think this one for sure was the most challenging. I remember you, because it's the most stylistic film I've done so far. El Americano, my previous one, was more of a gritty, raw look. And this one, I really felt it was important to have a more stylistic approach. And so yeah, it was a very big jump for me as a filmmaker.
You had a very particular style. Do you want to explain a little bit about, why that?
Right. So it is a love story, and my goal with it was to portray, not necessarily ghosts real, but definitely create an exaggerated reality. Basically, since they have the two main characters, they have a very strong connection that they don't fully understand. I wanted to portray that so that we basically are inside their heads, and it's kind of like how you will feel when you're in love, you're kind of a bit out of it and everything is just not fully real, and so that's what I was
A little
going
bit of a
for.
heightened, elevated
Right.
experience.
For sure. And then the ocean in the film also is a very important element in the film. So we definitely try to incorporate it visually throughout the story, in lighting and then in the composition.
I would go to the edit room and I would go, "Oh, look, there's the ocean again. I get it. Isn't that an amazing coincidence?" And she would be like, "It's not a coincidence."
Right.
Oh, the scene is blue. It's like oh, it's not a
Right.
coincidence. Okay, that was a design. Oh, the scene. That was a design too.
How
Right.
far in advance were you thinking about the visuals of the film? Did you, when you were writing the film, like were you planting all those in there?
A little bit. I definitely feel like, this doesn't feel like I definitely wanted to go, the exaggerated reality concept kept coming and coming. And then when we started pre-production, definitely, again, that was very clear. And it was, I was very lucky because we actually had 6 months to work on pre-production for the film, which is a bit, unheard of for
That's
such
great,
I
yeah.
know. And it was great because I had an amazing team of collaborators who loved the film, really believed in it, and my DP was one of them. And so we really had time to talk about it and, develop the concept. And we also had time to do a lot of location scouting, and I think, were able to find like really, really special locations that elevated the story.
How long did it take to make the whole film from start to finish? Starting to write it all the way to now you're finishing post-production in 3 weeks?
I
2 years?
think, yeah. I mean, if you count it from the time I started writing it, I will say 3 years.
So even though you had so much time to prepare,
Right.
that's still not. I've usually hear about like 5 to 7 years is what it takes to get a lot of films
Yes.
made.
It is true. This one, we went a bit, I guess, faster because we just decided once we decided to make it happen, we just worked on it nonstop.
And it was kind of in the outcome, waiting for financing and having financing fall through is kind of like the de facto experience of every indie filmmaker.
Right.
And we had been for years building up resources outside of our own project. Like I started a post house and then that post house got larger and larger, and she had her whole team from AFI, and we had like all these resources we couldn't put towards a project. So because of what happened with the previous film, we just got to a point where we were like, let's make a film for whatever credit card we can get. Let's make a $10,000 feature film.
It's such a typical filmmaker experience.
Right.
Let me just go into debt. Like
Right.
when
Right.
I'm in my 30s and at a time everybody else is buying houses, let me just put it all on the line,
Right.
see
Yeah.
what happens.
So
is
this all
it,
started
yeah.
that way. Like
Yeah.
it was literally like, how do we greenlight ourselves?
Right.
Instead of waiting for somebody else to greenlight us.
Right.
Especially for the first one.
Right.
And it was supposed to be a $10,000 to $15,000 mumblecore,
This film?
friendly.
Yeah.
This film.
What
I
did
think-
it turn out to be?
We spent 130, but
It's a
we
little bit
brought
more.
about
A little bit.
300,000 of post-production services. So it's
Right.
like a $400,000 film.
Yeah, so all together, almost like $500,000
Right.
in value.
Yeah, it started as a little $15,000 credit
Right.
card movie, but the impetus, and this is interesting for us to talk about tonight, is like just the spirit of like you can just do it yourself, And we, Claudia went off and wrote a script, knowing, okay, we're going to make a greenlighted ourselves movie, and like threw on the table this epic, massive, different time periods, drowning in the ocean, visual effects sequences, epic. And we were so just excited about greenlighting ourselves that we were like, okay.
Why couldn't we
let's-
do this?
Oh yeah, let's do that. 2 people talking in a room? Nah, that's boring. Let's do 2 people running in the fields of 1940s Holland and things
And
like
that is something that we did have. I mean, we did have the resources of the post-production to rely on VFX. And he said, just rely on VFX as much as you want. I was like, great. It was definitely a tool that we knew we had, but we didn't have a lot more.
And I have a VFX background,
Right.
so I was able to explain to her, like, there's a scene where somebody's drowning in the ocean, and her first idea was like, let's throw them in the ocean, and it's February, and it's like, that will kill the actors,
Yeah.
you know?
Their heart would go into shock.
And my
Right,
actors were
exactly.
ready to do it. They were like, "You can throw me
And
from
I
the
was
pier,
like,
it's
whoa,
fine."
visual
Like, okay,
effects.
We've got insurance. It'll be fine. What could go wrong?
We didn't
Yeah.
have insurance.
We didn't have insurance.
Don't
So
tell anyone. No, I'm kidding.
I explained to the team how we could fake it in a pool and have it look really, really real. Not fake it in a pool to the sense of,
Right.
you know, shooting down and all you see is the little water that's right around them,
Mm-hmm.
but actually showing a full background of the shoreline and waves coming with visual effects.
Right.
And so we did a whole ocean swimming sequence and a drowning sequence in like somebody's little backyard pool in Tarzana or something, you know. And it looks pretty epic on the screen.
But I mean, I guess you should know that when it started with 15,000, and then by the time we started, like we were done with the script, we actually we decided, okay, actually I think we can pull 50,000, you know, from family, friends, fundraising. So that was like where we started with 50,000, and then. Very luckily, and I think, you know, it helped. Like once we started like bringing like more the crew and more people started getting involved, and more people knew about the project. Then we had an investor come in and give us a little bit more money. So that's when we decided to actually do the shoot, split the shoot in two, and first shoot only the scenes that didn't have any VFX.
Yeah.
So that was. And the goal was that by doing that, then we were hoping to raise more money for the scenes that actually had complex VFX in them. There were VFX sequences. And so basically that's the approach that we took. And I really feel like it made a huge difference because we could actually shoot the non-VFX scenes fairly well, you know.
Right.
We
Right.
decided to do 12 days, which is all
Right.
we had, I don't know, 70 grand or something. That's the
Right.
most that we could get.
Right.
And that wasn't the whole film. That was
Right.
everything outside of really complex VFX sequences.
Right.
So you took a risk,
We
like
did.
not knowing if you'd be able to finish the rest of the
Yeah,
film.
Absolutely.
But that was never the concern. We thought that we'd be able to generate excitement about the movie,
Right.
to raise more money, to do a second shoot in September. And that second shoot required a lot of planning, and it did require people to go into the ocean, so we had to wait anyway.
It was definitely a risk because exactly, I mean, we're like, okay, we're doing this, but then there is a big chance that we don't know when we're hoping that in 3 months, but it was definitely a concern and a risk that we took.
But worth it because you came out with a
was.
gorgeous film. When she was writing this script and you guys were in production, did you ever feel that she was maybe asking a lot of you, like, you know, depending a lot on your resources and skills in VFX and finishing?
Not at all, because we were both so excited to just make our own film, and we both got caught up in the like let's greenlight ourselves fever, you know. And so I think there would have been a point of like, now I think we should see this Titanic sinking in the background, you know, like that would have been a bridge too far. But if you control the post-production, you kind of control the film. So the more that you can understand and have control of post-production, the more you can free yourself up to not be afraid to do things. And knowing what I know, I was kind of like, go big, you know? Like that's one thing that helps the film stand out is, you know, parts of it may feel like a small indie romance, and then it will suddenly explode out in this big sequence and then shrink back down. And, you know, hopefully the audience is like, wow, what was that? This is not your average indie romance. And so I wanted her to go big.
Was this the first time for you as a filmmaker to really be able to do whatever you wanted?
I knew what we had basically, so it's not really like I just went and like let's do whatever I want, because I knew that we had limited resources and we had to be really smart where we put where the money went, and there you know there were a lot of compromises, you know, and then one of them also we had a name actress, like, you know, who we could have brought on board, but then that would have meant like risking a big part of like the money that we had.
Right.
So all of that were like, you know, I'm going to put it on the screen. I really believe in the story, and we just want to, you know, again, make sure that we are very careful with how we spend it.
What
No,
were some?
she still had to be very careful.
Right,
It
right.
wasn't like do whatever you want.
Right.
It was, you know,
Right.
dream as big as you can, but
Right.
we still only had 20 days to make the movie.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Right. And also, I mean, which was nice is that it was we were working together in the sense where like I would ask him, this is what I have in mind, and then he would like, give ideas and like, oh, we can do this, or no, it would be better if we did it like this way so that it's more cost effective. So all of that was taken into consideration.
What were some of the bigger line items on your budget that you weren't willing to compromise on, that you couldn't live without?
We had to have a lab because she's a scientist. For example, location-wise, it was very important that I had a lab. It was very important that we had a Victorian era house, and then the drowning sequence also was critical for the story. So I was okay with waiting to do the drowning and then the Victorian era house later, even though it was a risk, because I really wanted to. They were very important to the story, so I wanted to handle them.
What was one of the most difficult scenes that you guys had to film that was most heaviest on your resources?
The drowning.
The drowning, the pool day, because we literally couldn't. We were underwater in the pool, and we actually didn't have a monitor. So my DP and I will like go under, like action, go under, and then we will come out. And I'm like, "Did you see anything?" He's like, "No, me neither." Like, okay, let's go again.
The actor would be like, "Good," and we'd be like,
"I know."
Did you have one of those encasements?
We did.
Yeah.
That's the one thing we could afford basically, and it was still a favor, of a friend. So that was definitely difficult because we had many scenes to cover, and they are drowning, and we couldn't see half of it.
It was supposed to be like roiling ocean, so
and
we
it was
were like making waves.
So
with,
and we
little
had like
pieces of
10
wood.
people behind me making waves with like cardboard and like wood pieces, and so that was definitely the most challenging day.
Were you able to have any sort of playback? So before the day was over, you absolutely knew that you got your shot?
We did. That day we did do that. And there was also the risk of like, oh my God, we take the camera off the case, and then if there is a problem, like it was kind of a bit dangerous because we didn't have any backup in case anything happened.
We had one
to the
camera, so
right.
if that case didn't get
Right.
locked up tight,
Properly
it would have
the second
flooded,
time.
and that would have been the
Right.
end of that day.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a lab that we got, and we were extremely lucky because we had actually put money down for another location for the lab, which wasn't a lab. We were going to have to build it, and I was really worried. Like, I don't know, it's not going to look real. And literally, like 3 days before we start production, our first AD tells us about this other lab where he worked a few years ago. So this was like a last-minute find,
And they were so excited to have us, which
well,
was unusual.
not at the beginning.
No?
And at the beginning, they were like,
later
we
that
won't show it to you. I mean, you should know that $10,000 a day is the minimum we can give it to you. So we were like, okay. We're like looking at this location, like knowing we cannot afford it. So then me and my line producer literally had to like almost cry, like make our speech like, please, this is my first film, and like we really need this lab, because on top of everything, this lab was like meant for the research my character does. And it happened to be kind of abandoned. So nowhere, any other lab, we would have been able to just go with our cameras and like shoot next to whoever is like doing in the middle of the research.
The woman that gave us the lab actually ended up in one of the scenes. I think that's how you won her over, right?
This is a party scene. A friend gave us his house.
Everybody at this party is a crew member. Those are crew members in the back.
Yeah, everybody. We found this other amazing location, and we needed a rain truck. But we couldn't. We used a hose.
We settled for a hose.
Yeah.
Augmented with
trick.
Visual effects,
A
but
little
on the
bit.
day it's just a water hose.
But it was incredible to see it. Before we went, we actually used the hose. We were supposed to get like a plate where they were dry, and it was like it's a romantic moment. And then when we actually like moved on to like with the hose and it's raining, like it just changed their performance, so much. So it was great to, fascinating to see that in them.
Was it kind of just weird and funny to watch it from, a greater objective point of view? Like there are these two actors who are just acting their hearts out underneath the hose.
And they were freezing.
This is some bored guy with a hose next to him.
Right, totally.
Were there any people that ended up being extras or crew members on your set that had nothing to do with the film industry that got involved just because they loved you guys? It sounds like it was just friends and family, everybody chipping in.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, yes, we had friends, family, like, I don't know if maybe so much on crew-wise, it was more like coming in as extras, helping with anything that needed to, like pickups, deliveries, any of that.
Pretty much every investor was a friend or family, and,
Right,
they're all in it,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
because
Right.
we needed people in the
Right.
background. For some of them, they'd never been on a set before. This was like the most
Right.
exciting thing that had happened in
Yeah.
10 years, you know.
Right. And
Yeah.
which was great because the energy on set was so special, and you know, to me that's very important. Everybody wanted to be there, and everybody was excited and working really hard.
Yeah.
So it was really a wonderful experience, even though it was, you know, a lot of work and many challenges.
What kind of camera did you use?
Red camera, the Red Epic.
Yeah. Took a...
And we're doing the finish in 4K. And that's another interesting thing to think about for filmmakers. There's not that much 4K content out there yet. There's a lot of Sony is trying to sell a lot of TVs in 4K, and people are going to turn on their 4K TVs and have not much to watch. Kind of like the early days in HD. So it's not that big a difference to finish the film in 2K or 4K. We shot in 4K, so we thought we might as well finish in 4K, and that'll be one more thing that this film has next to, you know, when it's sort of in the crowded market of other independent films, here's one that is finished in true 4K. All the visual effects are 4K. Something to think about making your film stand out by having it be one of the few films that actually are finished in 4K.
And it'll give the film longevity too. In the long run, as everybody's media is kind of switching over to that format.
Yes, when they do
Right,
the
right.
10-year anniversary edition, special collector's edition of this movie, it'll already be in
Exactly.
4K.
You always have to be thinking ahead as an independent filmmaker, you know?
No, it's true.
Now, there's a question I always ask every filmmaker when they come in, and that is, if you were looking back 3 years ago before you got started on this whole process, what is the one thing that you learned from this that you would have wanted to know from the beginning, or the one thing that you learned that you didn't know?
I mean, to me, it really is like trusting your instinct. I think as an independent filmmaker, because you are being told so many things all the time, and I think everybody just has a different journey. So what worked for me is not going to work for someone else. And again, I think when you are like, in my case, you know, I finished school and I had only done shorts, and I'm trying to make my first film, and like you have all this, you know, massive information, and I just, you know, whenever I've just trusted my instincts when things have like gone right for me. So that would be my advice. Just trust it.
What about you, Leandro?
How to make smart choices on an indie. There's sort of like the expensive and the creative way to approach every problem. And sometimes on this film we made the creative smart choice, and sometimes we made the wrong choice and it was a little too expensive. And sort of now I feel like we're going to make another film soon, and we feel like, oh my God, we're going to get this one done for $50,000. You know? We feel like we'll make a lot of smart. We'll know where to spend the money, and you know, always sort of trying to remember to spend the money on things that end up on the screen. You know, you can make bad choices that you need to spend a lot of money on schedule-wise or location-wise or something, of things that at the end of the day are not on the screen. We learned a lot about how to, the kind of smart choices you can make that put a lot of value on the screen and sort of nothing else. You know, it's a very sort of minimal, streamlined way of working that's all about just get it on the screen and move on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. This was so informative.
Thank you.
How can the audience here and online find out more about your film and when they can see it?
There's a little bit of social media going on, but at the moment we're very quiet. We are going to release a trailer very soon. And when that trailer comes out, there'll be quite a bit of marketing going on about the film. For now, you can just look for I Remember You.
We do have a Facebook page and a Twitter account, so you guys are more than welcome to come check us out, like us if you like the film, and we'll be posting all updates there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys.